in this particular topic was the percentage of response from online applications, 2%. I mean, 98% of the people that submit resumes online don't hear anything. And I just thought to myself, well, that's telling. Well, then there better be another way, right? But to keep it all in context, I want to emphasize that if you're looking for work right now and you're not getting any results, don't take it personally. It's not your fault. The hiring process, like I said, it's so inefficient. It's so incredibly tedious that you really can't blame yourself. But you have options, you have alternatives, you have other ways of looking for work and finding people. And like I said, the system's been broken, in my estimation, since the mid 1980s, and that's when I started in the business. It was probably broken before then, and there's a lot of reasons why it's broken. But if you continue to push against a system that's broken, expecting that it's going to work well, all you're going to experience is frustration. It's why I wrote this presentation. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people on LinkedIn, which is where I spend most of my time when I'm marketing and creating content. I wrote it because there were so many people saying things like, I've been sending out resumes. I got 400 out there. I got no response, or I only got feedback on 2 of them. People are putting that open to work badge on their profiles, which I think just reeks of desperation. That's a topic for another time. But the entire system, the interview process, the number of people in the interview process, the politics in the interview process, people in the process that don't know how to do interviews, the decision-making process to get to the actual offer, the whole thing's broken, just completely busted. And again, that's why one of the reasons I wrote this. I wrote this presentation, like I said, probably about a year ago, and my intention was to make it a workbook, which I've done, and probably give you access to that if you stick around to the end of the series itself. But I wanted to break it up into smaller parts. So I took the 8 or so chapters and called them episodes. And that's why I can do it in 10 or 15 minutes, because these are kind of like micro topics. I think the overall message that I'd like to convey, like you to take away, is, you can take back control. I would bet you if you are in the process of looking for work, you probably feel like you're not in control of anything. And that's not true. That's not true. And so part of these episodes, part of the Getting in Front of Decision Makers series is going to be, where can you exercise control and where can you not possibly exercise control and therefore don't need to worry about that. Put that to the side. Put that in your back pocket. So that's kind of the context of what this is and who I am. Like I said, 35 years of helping people find work, and most of that was running my own business. So I've seen quite a few different scenarios in regard to how to look for work. But what this episode's going to focus on is just not, it's the piece that I began with, the idea that you're going to go out into the world and you're going to put your reputation out in front of people. You got to have your story down. You have to have your story down. And like I said at the beginning, I think most people don't give this enough thought. What I find is most people don't give it any thought. And I think that's because human nature is such that we kind of think that we can tell, it's my story. Shouldn't I be able to tell it? Well, conceptually, yeah. But like anything else, like a stand-up comedian, you got to run this thing through practice. You got to bounce it off people. You got to rewrite your jokes, So, and if you go out and start telling people your story and it's not ready, it's not polished, it's not concise, you're not going to have any success. You're not going to get anybody convinced that they should talk to you again, that they should bring you into the interview process. So I would say now, if you haven't practiced and polished and bounced it off a bunch of people and polished it again and practiced it some more, I wouldn't get out there and start shaking people's hands. I wouldn't start sending resumes, not yet. And the next thing, speaking of resumes, is if your resume is your primary job search tool, just stop what you're doing right now. And people send me, they ask me when I first speak with them, do you want me to send me your resume? And I said, no, not yet. We've got some work to do before you do that. And it's too bad too, because the world presents itself, the online world presents itself as if you submit your resume here through this portal with a cover letter and you check these boxes and answer these questions, that'll be going to a human being, and that human being will feel an obligation to get back to you in a timely fashion. Well, that doesn't happen. That's bullshit, right? So if your resume is your primary tool, my suggestion is that you should revamp your strategy entirely. And, if you want to do that with me, I'm easy to find, but do it, you should, nonetheless, no matter how. So you kind of have to get most of the notions that you've been told are true. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. I probably wouldn't recommend that you do any of those things. And we'll talk about that during the course of this presentation and subsequent episodes, topic by topic. But if all you're doing is sending resumes, you're going to be living a frustrated life. And I've got a quick story about my younger brother some years ago calling me up in frustration. He was in the healthcare space and he lived in Nashville. He was a product manager. And he was whining about the fact that he'd sent out 250 resumes and had nothing to show for it. And he paid somebody $1,500 who was supposed to be the best recruiter in Nashville. And she sucked, I think is what he said. And I paused and I said, you remember what I do for a living, don't you? And he was completely unaware that I could help him at all. And what we ended up getting to was we totally revamped his strategy. We started networking in a certain particular capacity. We ditched the resume altogether. And I think it was 3 weeks later, he had a brand new job. So again, I got a 1,000 stories like that. That one happened to be my brother, and why I think resumes are kind of akin to toilet paper. Let me see here. My technology challenges me. I think the first step, I would say, it's time to reinvent yourself. I talked to, like I said, thousands of people about this. And at this particular juncture in your career, if you're a project manager, let's say, in the healthcare space, the next job that you get doesn't have to be a project manager in the healthcare space. This is an opportunity. If you're in transition or you're in fear of your job, or you don't like your job, or you're working for a toxic boss, or whatever, if you're in contemplating transition, don't lose sight of the fact that this is an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself, if you so choose. It's I would say 80%, depending on what you do, somewhere in the area of 80 to 90% of the skills that you have in your current job are transferable to another job. So if you really want to shake things up and change your world, change your mind, this is an opportunity to reinvent yourself. And again, just like the story piece of this journey, most people just blow by that. They miss this opportunity altogether, right? It's time. If you choose to do that, then we're going to start with the story. We're going to craft it. We're going to speak it over and over. We're going to record it, and then we're going to get feedback. So picture this. You start with you're crafting your story. You go through the process of reinventing yourself. And as a matter of fact, I have a workbook called Find Your True Purpose, which I give away for free, and you can get it at my website. That's the way I would begin the reinvention process if you choose to do that. I would get that workbook and I would go through the 7 questions, and it helps you kind of navigate this intersection of what you love to do, what you're very good at doing, good enough so that you could potentially teach someone else, and where there's money, you could monetize that skill. And the workbook takes you through that journey. It's kind of like looking in a mirror for about an hour and a half, really creating some self-awareness and really asking yourself some things that you might not want to hear the answers to, but this is an opportunity. This is the time to do that. And if you want to know more about that story crafting process, again, I'm easy to find. I think, what does it do for you? What's the purpose of the story? Why bother with the story and all the practice? Well, it's unbelievable when you can tell a clear, succinct, accurate, possibly even entertaining story. Your confidence goes through the roof. So that's number one. Most people, I find, profess not to be comfortable in interviews, this will help with that too. And maybe the most important thing, maybe they're all three important, but you'll stand out. You'll in a crowded field, you'll stand out, because going back to the very beginning, most people can't tell their stories. So if you can, imagine that, you know. I think the best way to reach me is go to my website, 7pillarsglobal.com, and on that site there are links to about me if you want to go deeper into my background. There is a LinkedIn cheat sheet that'll help you revamp your LinkedIn profile. There's a menu button for that at the top. And then there is the Find Your True Purpose workbook, which is also a menu item. There's three menu items on the top, all of them free, all of them further information. And then the other thing I would suggest is that you check out my YouTube channel and my LinkedIn profile. I've written a few hundred articles on LinkedIn, all related to this topic, professional development. And I've got some pretty good short videos on YouTube, some of which are a couple years old, but the content is evergreen. None of this stuff changes, with the exception maybe of the technology in the system itself, which I'm going to teach you how to get around in future episodes. So, well, that all took about 13 minutes. So I'm bumping up against 15, but that's just, if you walk away with one thing, don't get out there in the marketplace without stepping back, pausing, and crafting your story. And again, if you want to get into more detail about what that looks like from a tactical standpoint, I'm easy to find. So what I thought I would do is open things up to questions right now. And we've got 10 or 15 minutes that we can use to do that. And if we don't have that amount of time necessary, then we can conclude whenever the last question's been answered. So I've got my cohort, Tommy, behind the scenes. And Tommy, I don't know if you see any questions. If you have any questions in the chat, maybe you can fire one at me and I can take care of it here. Just start that process. Let's see. Okay. How do you know when you're ready to start sharing your story? That's a good question. You probably don't. And you gotta, this is one of those things, you get it to 85, 90% and you just start going out there. So it's a little contrarian to what I said. Don't talk to people until you have your story. If you try to perfect your story, well, there's no such thing as perfection. So you're going to delay the process of getting yourself out there into the marketplace. But I think the way to tell is the feedback that you'll get from your significant other, your best friend, your mom, your dad, someone that you know, love, and trust. Doesn't necessarily have to know anything about what I do or what you're doing in your job search, because they'll be able to tell you if it resonates. They'll be able to tell you if it's clear. They'll be able to tell you if it's concise enough or it rambles on a bit. That kind of feedback is, you'll be able to tell through that mechanism of feedback. And you should be doing this in front of the mirror too. And you should notice, as you get more comfortable, you should visibly notice the change in your demeanor and your confidence. But I think you'll be able to tell, and you won't be able to tell at the same time, if that makes sense. Let's see. I got to move over here to the chat. Let's see. It says, who do I get my resume noticed? I suppose it means, how do I get my resume noticed? I don't think that's a goal. I do talk about the resume in future episodes and certainly in other content. There's a certain set of rules of thumb, but I don't want you using your resume. So I think I'm going to stay away from that one for the time being. The standard stuff that you've probably already heard, keep it to one page if you can. Don't brag about irrelevant things. If you got your college degree 30 years ago, nobody really cares. Put it at the bottom, and metrics. How much money did you save? How much revenue did you generate? How many placements did you make? How many projects did you deliver on time and under budget? Data. People use a lot of flowery language on resumes, And I've seen 6, 7, 8-page resumes before. So there's no like rule of thumb, but let me put it this way. Nobody likes looking at resumes. So keep it short and sweet. And I should be able to tell if I want to talk to you from the resume. So rather obvious. Someone's asking me a couple of points we could use in the storytelling process. Yeah. This is how I break it down. I break it into 3 sections. The story is, there's the story you tell when you have time. So in the interview or a meeting where you've got 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes to tell your story. And that goes way back. That can have all kinds of interesting personal detail in it, all in support of whatever it is that you want the point to be that you're making, however you want to distinguish yourself. So that one's pretty long. But that's the foundation of the story. And that's the one that you're going to bounce off a lot of different people. That's going to have level of experience, years of experience, types of experience. And like I said, all the whatever metrics you can bring to your story would be great as well, because facts are much more influential than statements or opinions. And then the second piece of content is what people call the elevator pitch, which when you have the time that you have in the elevator, and that's 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 90 seconds. So you probably have time for a few sentences. The elevator pitch is inside the bigger story. So once you got the big story set up, then you want to take that and say, okay, where are the couple of nuggets that I can pull out of this story that are impactful enough that they would have an influence on someone in a 60-second time frame, the time it takes to get from the first floor to the 9th floor, so to speak. That's a very handy thing to have because you can deliver that almost anywhere. And then I like to tell people the third component of the story is what companies call your tagline. Nike, let's do it. Finger licking good. All these companies, they're 2, 3, 4 words. And sometimes the words alone don't mean anything. They don't have any inherent meaning, but they lead the listener to a particular place. That one's a little bit harder to get to, but that one's in the big story too. You can find that 3 or 4 word tagline. And then that tagline is also something now you can put this on stuff. You can put this on your website, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, wherever it might be appropriate. And now we're talking about the beginning of the process of, personal branding. So that's, I hope that answered your question, but that's a couple of points that I would consider when crafting my story. Let's see. Got a couple more here. Do you have a process from start to finish that maps out steps from the very beginning to the actual finished story? Well, we kind of touched on that. I would go back to the workbook I alluded to, the Find Your True Purpose workbook. Once you get that process in place, that'll begin kind of jump starting your story, because you have to ask questions in that process that will flesh out parts of your story. But I would also say, so I don't have a written document, but I would say that if that's maybe a good idea, maybe I should. That's one of those things that I thought was obvious enough that I didn't need to do it. But as soon as I heard the question or saw the question, I thought, yeah, that's don't presume anything, So that's what I would say in terms of the finished story. But the ideation component is the workbook is great for that. And we don't have enough time for me to go through the workbook here, but I'd be happy to do that personally with anybody that wants to. So let's see. What's the main goal of the story? And then what are, if any, other goals? Just to give me some direction. Well, the main goal of the story, in my humble opinion, is to get the individual listening to the story or seeing the story to be interested in talking further, to be interested in hearing more, to be interested in spending more time with you. That, as obvious as that might sound, that's the main goal of the story. And I would suggest to you, as you're crafting the story or building your resume or your LinkedIn profile, that you keep that in mind. Is this compelling? Is it, you've watched enough TV shows and movies and read enough books that these cliffhangers, right, at the end of the chapter, at the end of the episode, at the end of the blog post, whatever. I want to know more. I want to know more about this person. You know, the other goals, some of the other goals to me would be things like, have I established my credibility in this space? Have I made clear what my accomplishments are? Have I made clear, and people miss this one a lot, have I made clear what it is that I want to do, what it is that I want to be, and why I want to be that person? So those are some of the other goals, and that I would keep in mind. Ask those questions of yourself as you're crafting your story or writing your resume or your LinkedIn profile. All right, let me just see here. I got more. You mentioned that the hiring process is broken. If companies insist on submitting resumes into an online portal, aren't you breaking the rules if you don't, and then you're risking not being considered at all? I get that. I totally get that. The irony of it is you're not getting considered at all anyway. So who cares? I think that my general attitude, and I think, I'll tell you about another story that's kind of combination to kind of wrap things up. But I used to be tasked with calling directly into information technology departments as high up as I could go, director, vice president, C-suite, even depending on the size of the company. And I've got to tell you, in 35 years, probably 25 of that being in the transactional recruiting space, I can't tell you how many hiring authorities, non-HR people, IT people in my space, if you could get them talking, which I got pretty good at over the years, you would find out, how do you like the HR department? How do you like the hiring process? And almost everybody would just go off the record, like aggressively. It sucks. It's so frustrating. I hate it. Well, if you can get someone like that on the phone or whatever other way you can get their attention in this technical day and age, and you can broach the topic of how's the hiring process treating them now, you'll have a friend for life, And in terms of breaking the rules, I don't really care too much about a lot of rules. There are certain rules I care about, safety things and stuff like that, but doing things the way other people want me to do them just because that's the way they want me to do them, or that's the way it's always been done, I scrapped that philosophy a long time ago. And so if you can get the audience, which is the purpose of this course, these episodes, this program, how to get in front of decision makers that will unfold over the next 7 episodes, you send your resume to that person after you agree that you just became best friends. And then he or she will usually say to you, now submit this resume through the portal online, and it'll get in front of the right people. And then I'll go over there and say, I want to talk to this person. So they don't care internally about breaking the rules. They just need to save face. They need to appease the process or appease the gatekeeper. And that's very easy to do. So don't worry about breaking the rules. As a matter of fact, you'll have fun. If you can get somebody in a hiring authority on the phone or in communication with them, think of it this way. That takes balls, right? And people that are in positions of authority, they like balls. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. We're out of questions, so we'll wrap it up this time. I'm not sure whether we'll be back in a week or 2 weeks. My co-collaborator and I have to discuss that after the fact, but we're going to shoot for every week. And there's, like I said, 8 episodes. So there's 7 more from this one. If you want to contact me, that's the way to get me on the screen. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn too. Mark Aylward, Aylward. So hope that was helpful, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day. Take it easy.